Wait a minute. Desmond? Heyo!
Black Sunday here.
So, I'm mixing things up a little. If you've seen my intro video, you know I'm into video games. I've been doing Kingdom Hearts exclusively because the ideas for these videos had been in my head for some time. The thing is though, Kingdom Hearts is actually my number 3 franchise. Number 2 is Ace Attorney. Hold it! I already told you, for comedic purposes, you fit better than any other franchise I play. The only reasons why you're number 2 is because A, your franchise is mostly rated T, and B, your franchise's level of fantasy is a tidbit higher than my number 1 franchise, which mixes fantasy with technology, and has more action and gore, not to mention actual adventure versus a visual novel. Anyway, as you can guess from the title of this video, my number 1 franchise is Assassin's Creed.
We work in the dark to serve the light. We are assassins.
When I got my PlayStation 5, in addition to Guardians of the Galaxy, Assassin's Creed Valhalla was one of the games I got for Christmas. It took me over 100 hours to complete. I enjoyed the Viking setting and the improved graphics that the PS5 provided. I also liked traveling on the Viking ship and the idea of plundering monasteries in order to improve the settlement Ravensthorpe.
Conservatives, I apologize if this hurts your feelings, and I would never do this in real life.
And of course, you also get to assassinate members of the Templars' predecessor, the Order of Ancients, across the lands that would become England.
And little did I know until very late into gameplay, the main character,
Eivor,
is canonically female, and I played as a male.
Spoilers! Spoilers! Don't even think about it.
The reason why Eivor had both male and female DNA was because Eivor was the reincarnation of the Isu Odin, the real Odin, who he and his companions died when the Isu civilization collapsed. Odin used a special device that would allow him to live on in another person, but Eivor was naturally a female, even though we had the option of playing both genders. But I digress. Near the end of the main campaign, I noticed something interesting. The modern-day protagonist, Layla, ran into someone called the Reader. His voice was very reminiscent of the first modern-day protagonist, Desmond Miles, who was featured in recordings in the game. At first, I couldn't believe my ears, but a lot of people online ran into the same conclusion. And that's what this video is all about. It's time for an
Assassin's Creed theory.
Desmond Miles is still alive.
Unlike my Kingdom Hearts theory videos, which has been counting items on what will be used based on my logic on how Kingdom Hearts as a franchise will follow through, this theory, an Assassin's Creed theory, will follow the flow of past games with the present to reach this conclusion. There are only 2 games that have this connection. Valhalla, obviously, and my favorite video game of all time, Assassin's Creed 3.
It was shit!
Say what you will, but I enjoyed it to a T, especially on PC.
Which has since broke.
It was what got me into Assassin's Creed and M-rated games in general.
Get on with it!
Now that the introductions are out of the way, let's see how this theory is right. How Desmond Miles still lives.
Are you with us? Okay. Then let's go.
Assassin's Creed 3.
When playing in the modern day as Desmond Miles, you run into a holographic character named Juno,
Which was a member of the first civilization, or the Isu, as we later call them.
She tells the story of how her people tried to save themselves from the sun's solar flare thousands of years ago. She detailed 2 methods, which I am dubbing as the shield method and the apple method. The shield method had 2 ways of doing it: building giant pillars to dispel the flare, or power an electromagnetic shield around the world. Unfortunately, neither were possible because there was not enough manpower to build the necessary material, no matter how small they could create either one. The Isu even tried to automate the building process, but the result was the same. The apple method is based on how the Apple of Eden was used to control humanity, but the Isu found out that if there was enough people wishing for the same thing under the influence of an apple, it would become reality. So the Isu decided to send several apples to orbit, one initially, and when done, everyone would ask the same thing when the flare comes: make us safe. Unfortunately, this too was a failure, because there was not enough apples to build to make this possible.
Now what?
Now that the Isu realized all attempts to save their civilization have failed, their only hope is to protect their legacy. The method they used was a procedure that allowed them to reincarnate over and over again. It would prove to be successful, as we later find out with Juno's husband, Aita, in Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. More on this later. But this procedure was not for everyone. It drove some Isu mad. This was what led them to set the human race free. Juno, on the other hand, had another idea. Create a new vessel that would stand the test of time, in the form of a server, to keep their conscience running as data until the time was right. However, according to Juno, to get out of the server, it required something more wrong. And as we find out at the end of 3, we find out what that is. A sacrifice. Using a pedestal, Desmond sacrificed himself to activate the server, which would free Juno. But it was not without bad consequence. It also turned on every single Isu artifact in the world, including all technology outside of apples and shield pillars, which created a magnetic field large enough to dispel the solar flare, as we later find out in Valhalla.
He saved the world.
But the fact remained, Desmond Miles was dead. Or so we thought.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Near the end of the game, Layla finds a temporal calculator, which Eivor and Sigurd dubbed Yggdrasil, the Tree of Life according to Norse myth. Eivor and Sigurd used it to reach Valhalla, when it was actually just a simulation. Eivor also used it to imprison Basim, when he tried to take Sigurd hostage and tried to kill Eivor. Back in modern times, it was found out that Basim was the one overclocking the calculator and causing all of the other Isu artifacts to overclock as well, making the magnetic field stronger than need be and nearly wrecking the planet. So Layla made a bargain with him. Free him, and the overloading of the calculator will stop, which she does, using a pedestal very identical to the pedestal Desmond used to save the world. Little did she know, until it was too late, the Staff of Hermes.
The artifact that makes its wielder immortal.
And the artifact that Layla found in Assassin's Creed Odyssey was taken by Basim, which we later find out is the reincarnation of the Isu Loki. And the radiation that was around the calculator will end up killing Layla's vessel. Basim switched places with Layla, like Juno switched with Desmond. Where did she find this out? After using the pedestal, she runs into the reader who tells her these things. He is inside the machine on a quest to make sure that another disaster never arises again. The reader called this his new life, meaning he once lived a life before. And a lot of people have figured this out. Listen to his voice.
No, you do not.
This voice is eerily similar to, if not the same, as that as Desmond Miles. That's right. Desmond Miles is the reader.
Objection!
He may have been reminding himself of his past life. The proof? Nolan North, the voice of Desmond, was also the voice of the reader.
Which is disputable, as the source is Wikipedia.
This is similar to how Ian McDiarmid was cast as both Palpatine and Darth Sidious in the Star Wars prequel trilogy.
How is this possible? How?
Juno used one of those servers in 3 to entrap her consciousness. When Desmond turned on the artifacts to save the world, it also freed Juno. When we thought it killed Desmond, it instead trapped his consciousness inside the servers. This isn't the only time it happens in the series. Layla used the pedestal to slow down the machine and in turn freed Basim. Their places were swapped just like Desmond swapped with Juno. And what's worse, due to the radiation and losing the Staff of Hermes to Basim, Layla's vessel also dies, but her consciousness remains. 2 gifted assassins, imprisoned by the Isu, stripped of their vessels. But the fact remains, just because your vessel is gone doesn't mean you're dead. You're only dead if your consciousness is snuffed out. That's what happened to Layla, that's what happened to Desmond. He is stripped of his vessel, but his consciousness remains as the reader.
Hold it!
To prevent his friends from trying to find him. Desmond knows that if his identity is found, and found that he is still alive in a way, his friends, Layla included, will try to do everything they can to save him, when he knows they can't. His vessel is long gone.
This isn't Kingdom Hearts, where you can create a new vessel at will.
Objection!
Those vessels only apply to Isu, not humans. Isu DNA is very different from human DNA. Isu DNA is in a triple helix, whereas human DNA is a double helix. So if Desmond were to try to take one of these vessels, it wouldn't work, because its synapses would be incompatible with the Isu DNA.
And I think Desmond figured that out during his time in the Isu technology.
Oh well, we tried.
But this wasn't the only reason why he didn't want to be found. His father and his friends still had a mission to down Abstergo, and they cannot afford any missteps in their secret war.
Ouch.
It's tragic, but most likely true. Desmond Miles is the reader. Desmond Miles is still alive. And with that, recap time!
Like how Layla swapped places with Basim in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Desmond swapped places with Juno in Assassin's Creed 3, transferring their consciousness to and from an ISU server. Their vessels are gone, but they still remain. Desmond changed his identity to the Reader to protect those he loves from danger, while trying to save them from another disaster. Desmond Miles remains as the Reader. Desmond Miles is still alive.
I get it.
If you like my videos, please hit the subscribe button and give them a thumbs up. Also leave out comments, as I certainly love debates. Thank you for watching, and remember, you will receive the information you seek, or my name isn't
Black Sunday.
Job well done, lad.
See ya!